I can guarantee that you didn't click on this video by searching up Nightcry. Don't worry, I completely forgot about this game myself. That was, of course, until Hifumi Kono, the game designer for the old Clock Tower games, held a gun to my head and threatened to pull the trigger. So, what is Nightcry? Nightcry is a spiritual successor to Clock Tower, an old survival horror game originally for the SNES. It was kickstarted and raised a whopping $314,000 and only roughly $38,000 on Campfire. Not able to quite make the stretch goals, but it seems like no matter how much money went into it, the project couldn't find the funds to make a great game. Now, I have to give credit where credit is due. There are some compelling concepts and moments where the game felt good, but that's just it, there were moments. This led to the game being very rough and janky. Now, I love my jank, but there were moments where I wanted to actually give up on this game. There were multiple occasions where the game breaks its own rules or acts like an old game from the 90s and gives no inclination as to what the fuck to do. The game came out in 2016. That is unacceptable. The fact that it's an outdated point-and-click adventure game doesn't help its case. It's games like these where I hate but love to play, not because the game is good, but because of what the game could have been. The best way to explain the game is to do the classic who, what, when, where, and why, minus the where. So far, we already kind of touched base with all of them, but let's get some more backstory for the game by covering the who. Hifumi Kono is the old game director for the Clock Tower games, and this is the first game he has fully directed since. There are some big names working alongside him, such as Nobuko Toda. She is known for her work as a composer for games like the Metal Gear Solid series and Halo 4. Another talented composer, Michiru Yamane, helped as well and is known for her work on the Castlevania series, most notably Bloodlines and Symphony of the Night. Masahiro Ito, one of my personal favorites, known for his work with Silent Hill, was the one who designed the Scissor Walker. So a pretty all-star team, but sadly, it doesn't live up to their names. To not tarnish their legacy, the music was great and added to the unsettling nature of everything, and the Scissor Walker is truly creepy looking. But at the end of the day, these elements alone couldn't carry this rushed and doomed from the start game. This is the point of no return. We are now headed into spoiler territory.
Welcome to the first segment of Mikey's Fragile Mental Radio Station, the one and only place to hear my ramblings and whatever insane and inane thoughts that tend to escape my mindscape. For tonight's episode, I would like to remind all ladies, gentlemen, those in between and those who are not, to be careful not to get seduced by snakes with their long and sexy spinal cords. You never know what they're going to do to you on your first date. You fool! You let me in!
Now, what exactly is the game about? Well, the game tells its story through a series of events where your actions influence the outcome of the game. Each chapter you play as a different character trying to find out what's happening from a different perspective. This is definitely a wonderful storytelling method, but the execution is very poor. Similar to Until Dawn, there are multiple endings and they change based on which side of the flowchart you start on. Now, the main issue is that, unlike other games, Nightcry makes the important decisions not very clear or obvious. A few of them, yeah, like using gloves to not fall to your death, obviously, but not posting on social media plays such a huge part of it? Gross. I will say, some of these are smart and make sense. There's a part in the first section as Monica where you find Jessica dead. If you don't have that knowledge later on while playing as Rooney, when you receive a phone call from Jessica, you would know that she is not real and not to trust her advice, leading you to a dead end. As nice as that is, it brings me to my first and largest complaint about the game. It's all over the place. The timeline doesn't make sense and there are several large plot holes or just things that are not explained in general. I don't know if there was an inner conflict at the studio or something, but something definitely went wrong. So, the story is set on a cruise liner called the Oceanus. Chapter 1 starts off by following Monica, who is trying to slip away from the party. After some basic exploration and tutorials, she finds herself in a sticky situation. Dante from DMC Devil May Cry gets sucked into a soda machine and dies. This is the part where shit starts to go down and a bunch of blood is spilled. A large monster called Scissor Walker appears and is thirsty for Monica. This is the introduction to a major mechanic of the game, the chase sequences. How it works is you have stamina and running costs stamina, and so does defending yourself from the Scissor Boy. If you run out of stamina, you'll fall over and be left vulnerable to being killed. Sounds fun, right? Well, the kicker is you really don't know how much stamina you truly have because it's conveyed through an awful way with the screen flashing red. It's hard to make out exactly how much more you can run due to it always flashing and feels almost random when you end up falling over. So, from this point on, you just try to find where the other passengers are hiding and get to some form of safety. Chapter 2, you play as Leonard, who travels off the Oceanus to see if he can find salvation, or at least a way to call someone for help. It's important to note that each chapter starts off roughly around the same time. This is where the cult appears and is introduced, and after a series of frustrating puzzles, the game leads you down to a well where there's a secret passage. One of the most frustrating moments I had with this game was in this section. Normally when using items to interact with the area, you see the circle indicating that it is in fact something you can mess with. However, the game decides to break its own rule and only make something interactable only when using an item. Games don't really piss me off too much, but this is honestly going to be my most memorable upsetting moment since Danganronpa 2. Eventually, you find a sedated Jerome who isn't really introduced until the next chapter. Once taking him back to the raft, an explosion happens on the ship and a masked cultist appears behind Leonard, knocking him out. Chapter 3 is played as Rooney, an introverted girl who everybody seems to hate for no reason at all. In almost every conversation there is some malice towards her. That is until Jerome confronts her on the ship as she almost kills herself by falling overboard. It turns out the two have more in common than to be expected, and Jerome invites Rooney to his room to talk more in private. Once arriving, the game totally surprises me by Jerome actually just wanting to talk about how he too has suicidal tendencies and whatnot. After he pops out to get food, Scissor Walker appears and begins to torment Rooney. She escapes and meets up with some other survivors where she makes a decision that she wants to save more people. She finds Jerome on the stairs, who is seemingly untouched. I thought this was going to be a clever setup for later on, showing that this is a fake Jerome or something, but it is him and breaks the timeline because the explosion does not take place until later in the chapter. Which, if you were not paying attention, Jerome wasn't on the Oceanus until after the explosion happens, because he was on the island in the coffin all fucked up and sedated. So this does not make any sense whatsoever. I don't want to be wrapped up ranting about this, so eventually Rooney stumbles upon Leonard, who is extremely disfigured and left on life support. Rooney makes a tough choice to put him out of his misery and moves on growing as a person. Rooney finds out the secret that Vigo, the owner of the ship, had an illegitimate child with a woman named Yolanda who burned up in a house fire. Although it doesn't make any sense, it is heavily implied that she is somehow the Scissor Walker and that Jerome is the child. Trust me, I know this is a slodge. I never said the story was amazing, but we're almost done. Rooney confronts Vigo in a nice and eerie dance floor with everyone who was killed strung up like puppets. Jerome then sneak attacks Rooney to kill her, but Monica saves the day by knocking him out. As they are being cornered, Rooney figures out the secret, that the Scissor Walker is controlled by a fake eye she found earlier on. She rips out her eye and replaces it with the fake one and commands the Walker to kill the one who turned it into a monster. It kills Vigo and disappears. The game fades to Monica and Rooney being saved by a helicopter being the only two survivors. At least that's inferred from the name of the ending, 2 survivors. The other endings are dumb, with only a few of them feeling like there was an ounce of effort put into it. Seduced by the Snake and Purgatory being the most notable. It's never been confirmed as to which ending is canon, but it's widely accepted that the 2 survivor ending is. The amount of times endings are reused in the flowchart is kind of ridiculous. In the second chapter there's only one actual ending besides the dead ends. I don't want to have to point out the obvious, but this makes your quote unquote choices not feel very important. That could be said about a lot of this game, just unimportant.
Oh, no. Hey, no, wait. What are you doing? No, you can't. No, wait. No, wait.
The game was originally supposed to be just a mobile game, but after being met with a lot of dissatisfaction from fans, they started their Kickstarter to get money to create a full game on PC and a version on the Vita as well. The game was originally set to release in 2015, but then got pushed all the way back to May 2016. The Vita version didn't even come out until 3 years later, in January of 2019. So let's talk about why the game failed. Simply due to money. One of the stretch goals would have added another chapter to the game as Jerome, possibly explaining one of the biggest plot holes in the game, or maybe even some side characters who have a huge part in the game but aren't shown on the surface level. How could they ship the game as is if they had a whole section of the story locked out because they didn't get enough money raised? This just makes me want to Nightcry on the inside, because when a game has potential and you can see it, it's rough seeing it fail. A good comparison of a similar situation is from Deadly Premonition, which had a small budget as well, but with this, Deadly Premonition had better execution and did it where it mattered. I just thought that it would be important to note that there are games that are large in scope that can thrive on a smaller budget. The worst thing a piece of media can be is average. The game just lacked sustenance. It was limited to being chased and solving very simple puzzles, all the while not explaining what to do or where to go. The animation and graphics are laughable, as it looks like someone who just learned how to model decided to make this game. It's almost comparable to The Room. You know that notoriously bad movie that was Tommy Wiseau's baby? The main difference between these two is one is well known and the other is not. And that brings this game to a close. It's said that you die twice in your life. Once when you actually die, and again when you're spoken about for the last time. I wonder if I'm the last person to talk about this game. Hopefully not. Thank you all for watching. I know this video isn't really about a new and hot game, or really a known game at all, but I felt like if people didn't know about this game, then it's worth learning about. I've noticed that a lot of you watching are not subscribed, not to be a beggar, but if you enjoyed the video, please subscribe. It helps a lot. Or if you didn't, leave a comment and tell me why so I can improve my content. Thank you again for watching.